Good morning. My name is Rebecca Stainer. I've been with Generation since 2001, and I'm a member of our quality and clinical excellence infrastructure and compliance team. So I'm one of the big nerds, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about the COVID-19 vaccine. All right, we are fairly new in this process, so there are a lot of really good questions. Is it safe? Does it work? What kind of vaccine technology is this? What is an EUA? How long will it last? Are there side effects? What if I've already had COVID? Does the vaccine use virus? Will I have to wear a mask? So I'm hoping that we answer all these questions now. All right, what to know about the vaccine? There are two types that will be used in our on-site clinics. They are Pfizer and Moderna. They're very, very similar in design. Their results were very similar. So as far as we're concerned, they're fairly fungible. They do not contain the virus that causes COVID-19, which means they can't give you COVID, which is a nice thing. They are mRNA vaccines. And this technology has been used for more than a decade in cancer therapies. It's somewhat new to vaccine technology, but we have a lot of research on it, which allowed a lot of really good science. The purpose of it is, unlike, say, a polio vaccine where it's injecting you with dead virus for your body to respond to, this is a little bit of instruction to make just a harmless protein. Your cells are already making proteins. And as soon as that protein comes about, the body says, what? And it decides to fight it because it doesn't recognize it. And once it creates antibodies, it also tells your body, to your system, to be on the watch for this protein because it is a foreign entity, which is great because that same protein is on the outside of the virus that causes COVID. So if in future you get that virus in your system, your body will watch for it, see it, and know what to do. Can the mRNA vaccine give you COVID? No, there's no virus in it. This is just about creating a protein so your body's watching for the virus. Will it change my DNA? No, this little bit of instruction to create a protein, it is incredibly fragile, which is why it has to be kept so cold. And it will break down very shortly after it's delivered its instruction and is fairly undetectable after that point, or is undetectable at that point, which means it's been broken down completely. It doesn't get anywhere near the nucleus of your cells, and it cannot affect your DNA in any way. What is an emergency use authorization? So this is the FDA's approach to putting out a vaccine at the very earliest opportunity after it's been proven safe, when there is a public health emergency going on. It does not mean that it was done too quickly. In the case of this process, speed is something that a lot of people are concerned about. In a lot of cases, many of the steps happened at the same time because the pharmacies were banking on the fact that their science was really good and they would get approval. They started manufacturing it on the belief that they would get approval. That step doesn't usually happen before approval is given. So a lot of these steps happened at the same time, which added some speed, but it does not mean that any single step was skipped. And as far as the evaluation process goes, the FDA on these really big and important virus vaccines will pull in an advisory panel. This advisory panel is not associated with the manufacturers and are part of the academic wing of the science. They don't have any conflicts of interest, and they will advise the FDA on what they think. And then the FDA will take that, stew on it, and decide whether or not to approve the vaccine for use. Who was in the vaccine trials? That's what's pretty awesome about this, is that you can see that between Pfizer and Moderna, there were about 70,000 people in the trials. A normal vaccine trial is about 3 to 5,000. And what's even more amazing about these trials is that they focused on a wide range of ages, a good scope of diversity. They had people with various medical conditions and diseases, including active cancer, and including a lot of what the clinical world calls comorbidities, which just means essentially people that have medically fragile conditions. And as you can see here, there are older adults in this, which was very important given who is most affected by this virus. Was it effective? Oh my gosh, yes. You can see that Moderna and Pfizer, between the two of them, 94.1 to 95% effective on average between all of the people who participated. Polio is way up there with 99%, and the flu vaccine is way down there with 44%. So you can see how excited we are about this. 94.1 and 95% is exactly what we were hoping for. Days to effectiveness. So in this chart, the red line is the placebo group who did not get the vaccine. They were the control group. And the blue line going across is the group that did get the vaccine. And what's really exciting about this is that it shows about 10 to 14 days after the very first dose, you see those rates of COVID in the vaccine group flatline. Which means that some protection starts after the first dose. However, it is not fully in place. Protections are not fully in place until about 1 to 2 weeks after the second dose is given. Without the second dose, you are not really considered vaccinated, and there's not guarantees about the protection lasting. What to expect for side effects? Like any vaccine you've ever taken in the past, there's maybe a chance you're going to feel a little bit. Most common were fatigue, headache, and pain at the injection site. But some people experience muscle pain, chills, fever, generally feeling tired. The likely side effects in almost all cases were mild to moderate and very short term. Most people is about a day. Pain at the injection site, that could last a little bit longer. Side effects were more pronounced after the second dose. I have a chart that we'll look at in a moment, but again, there are a lot of people who will experience no side effects. There's some people who experience no side effects after the first dose, but they might feel it more after the second. But in overall, after the second dose, there was more likely to feel something. We're pretty excited that older adults had fewer side effects that really reduced at about 55 and up, but especially, above 70. Side effects are okay. You may not feel side effects and the vaccine's working just fine, but know that if you're feeling those side effects, that's your body responding, making antibodies and teaching itself to police so that they know what to do when the virus may or may not come to you in future. It's a good sign. It's not maybe fun, but it's a good sign. If somebody gets a vaccine, the next day they may have a slight headache, and or they may have a slight, fever or something. We'll be thoughtful. Normally that person wouldn't make it through our screening to start their shift. But if we know you had the vaccine yesterday, we're going to be pretty thoughtful about somebody who's otherwise feeling fine, just had the vaccine. This is a predicted, expected side effect. So anyway, we will have a careful approach for that. It will not cause you to test positive for COVID-19. PCR tests are the ones that are the gold standard that we use almost everywhere. And they are looking to see if you have an active case of COVID. There are tests out there that are not really medically useful, but they're testing to see if you have antibodies so that you know if you've had it in the past. We don't use those. You could test positive for antibodies because we hope you are building them. But yeah, that's not a test that anyone is using. Generally, for all normal tests for COVID, you will not test positive because you've had the vaccine. All right, this is that chart of side effects. On the left side, you see dose 1. And you can see fever, headache, and feeling tired. Those were the most common ones that people saw. This specific chart is for ages 18 to 55. The trials were for ages 16 and up, but this is focusing on just this specific group since this is the bulk of us. And the first dose, you can see it's kind of low amount as far as percentages go. We're looking at like a lot of 8% of people who felt anything. The second dose, you can see that increases a little bit more. You're hitting more like 33% of people experience something. With the Pfizer one, it looks like about half of the people experienced a mild headache. What they found is that by and large, all of the side effects could be very effectively managed with Tylenol or ibuprofen. This is for side effects related to 65 and up. You can see the first dose is on the left again, and what's kind of awesome is that this age group felt far fewer side effects, if any at all. On the first dose, it was fairly uncommon to feel anything. On the second dose, you can see those numbers inch up. Most common was headache, fever, and just feeling tired. All right, when and how long will it last? This is a really good question. So we had that graph earlier that shows about 10 to 14 days after the first dose, rates of COVID in that vaccine population started to flatline. So there is effectiveness that starts with that first dose. But the first dose is really just to prime the body. It's the second dose where the body goes through it all again and tests all the systems that it puts in place. Did it build those antibodies? Did it watch for it and remember it? So you're not really considered fully protected until about 1 to 2 weeks after that second dose. And you're not considered vaccinated unless you've had both doses. As far as how long, this is a really good question. It certainly was effective for the entire length of the clinical trials to date. And to date, there hasn't been any decrease in effectiveness, but they're watching this going forward to monitor effectiveness because everybody wants to know that answer. What we do know right now is that right now it is 94.1 to 95% effective, and that's fantastic. What if I've already had COVID? This is a really good question. This is a handful of us. The vaccine is still highly recommended. We wouldn't want you to get the vaccine while you have COVID or immediately after. And that's mostly just to protect our vaccinators. Our vaccinators are touching the shoulder of thousands and thousands of people over the next many months, and they cannot have any exposure risks because of that. But, if you had COVID, you developed antibodies, some anyway, and you probably experienced about 90 days of somewhat protection, of resistance to getting COVID or having the virus develop into COVID. However, your body was sick when your body was building those antibodies. In this case, a vaccine is injecting into a healthy body, and you are going to get 2 of those shots. Your body has a nice slow pace to develop the antibodies and teach itself to police for that protein, because that protein will be there again in the next time it sees coronavirus. As far as the waiting period after you've had COVID, the emergency use authorizations will clarify that. So we'll know more once we know what vaccine we will have at our on-site clinics. All right, will I still need to wear a mask? As you can see from the photo, the answer is yes. we will continue most of our precautions for the time being. And the reason is that, as with any vaccine, we need the vaccine on the shelf doesn't save lives. It's people taking the vaccine that saves lives. So we need the community at large to be vaccinated to the greatest degree possible before our society has protections and before transmission rates drop. So we're up front. We're going to have the vaccine first and be protected first, and we just need to give everyone else time to catch up. Additionally, you have new antibodies that will fight the virus if it sees it again, and that's awesome. You're going to be just fine. However, it does not mean that while you're fighting the virus, if you pick it up in future by chance, that you couldn't be infectious to somebody. And there is a great concern that somebody vaccinated will feel like, whew, I'm fine, I'm immune. It's important to follow protocols like wearing a mask and social distancing, because you may have no idea you're fighting the virus because you're vaccinated and you feel great. But you may be fighting it and you may be infectious and have no idea. So we need to be really careful. We're waiting for that day where transmission rates are low enough because the general population is vaccinated. Is it safe? This is my favorite question because the science is great. Safety is the most important criteria for the FDA. It's essentially the only one they look at first before, and then they factor in, is this needed? Is it effective? The FDA has used very strict standards for years and years and years, and they applied them in this case. And they didn't skip any steps. There are some steps the manufacturer overlapped, again, because they had a lot of confidence that the FDA would approve their vaccine, and that certainly helped speed things up. 2 independent advisory committees, as I mentioned, reviewed and monitored the vaccine. They reviewed the data. The FDA always brings in these committees on important vaccines like this, and they tell the FDA really candidly what they think. And the FDA will stew on that, and they'll make decisions about approval, approval for what, for when, for who, based off not only the vaccine data, but this advisory committee's recommendations. All right. Sorry, jumped ahead a little bit. Again, it will not cause you to test positive on the COVID PCR tests that we use, that generally everyone uses. Because the vaccine doesn't contain any virus of any sort, you cannot get COVID from the vaccine. There are, some vaccines use egg components. There's usually an egg allergy question. There's no egg component to this virus. There may be medical reasons not to take it. Your healthcare provider may feel like there's a caution for you. This is primarily for people who have medical histories of severe reaction to vaccines. In the trials, there were 2 people in the UK who immediately after the first dose had kind of an anaphylactic reaction. They were immediately given adrenaline and they were just fine. But that was enough to have a caution for people who have a medical history of severe reaction to vaccines. Those 2 people, among others, were specifically included in the trials because they have had a history of severe reactions to vaccines. There are other reasons. The trials were for ages 16 and up, so approval for the vaccines is likely in all cases going to be just for 16 and up. And then there were people in the trials who were pregnant or got pregnant, and there were no adverse effects, vaccine-related adverse effects that were exhibited. However, the whole pregnancy didn't carry through, and there's just more time needed to understand that data. And perhaps to further test. So at this time, a healthcare provider may advise against it. But the benefits of getting vaccinated are also really high. So you may have, a really serious conversation with your healthcare provider on the risk benefits related to any specific condition that you have. Also, we'll monitor for side effects. Initially, as soon as you get the shot, they're going to have you sit down for 15 minutes just so they can eyeball you, make sure you're fine. After that, we'll ask that everybody kind of be very self-aware. You know the side effects to expect, probably mild headache, probably a little bit of pain at the injection site, maybe feeling a little bit tired, maybe a mild fever. These things are normal, so you watch for them and be aware, but we do want you to report any side effects whatsoever that you feel. All right. How was it developed so fast? This is a really good question. The major reasons really are, this was a global effort among the leading scientists across the world, and they were very focused on this goal, an unusual thing. Also, there was a nearly unlimited money, knowledge, manpower, and technology put behind this. Additionally, we have 17 years of clinical research on similar coronaviruses, such as SARS and MERS. The mRNA technology has been studied for a decade. These gave us huge jump starts. Additionally, we had a very large pool of diverse adults in the volunteering for the trials. As you saw, trials are usually 3,000 to 5,000 people. These were nearly 70,000 people. This made a huge difference in understanding it and understanding it quickly. All right. Why should I get vaccinated? Well, I hope I sold you on it. And I know that my enthusiasm is based on being knee-deep in the scientific data, talking directly to state, county experts, organizations that are right at the front line of what this is, how it's approved, who it's approved for. So I will pause for a minute because I feel like this is just so great. And how could you not? And I'd like to just really empathize with the reasons that you would think on this. The first, of course, is just to protect you and your loved ones. There are, and if I hope that you consider that your coworkers and residents are among your loved ones, but if not, I listed them also on here. We really want to cherish our people. COVID-19 is an extreme health threat to our community. It's changed how we do everything, how we operate, how we socialize. We want to end this pandemic, and it's in our grasp. Additionally, rates are escalating in every area around all of our communities. And not only are they escalating, they are escalating exponentially rapidly. And which means there's only so much we can do. We can have tremendous precautions in place. We can follow them beautifully. The odds are against us, though, if the surrounding areas have such high rates of positivity. Additionally, we are given this really tremendous opportunity to get the vaccine first. There are people across the world that are desperate to be vaccinated, and our people are being recognized as the country's highest priority. What an opportunity that is. And we really want to set an example. Since we're going first, we're the group that everyone else, including the general public, will look at because they assume we're better educated about the vaccine. We have been on the front lines and seen what COVID-19 does to our people. We really want to role model as members of the healthcare community, as members of the senior living industry, as members of people who live who live communally. Additionally, we will be hosting on-site clinics for vaccinations. There will not be an easier or less inconvenient way to get the vaccine. You know, the federal government's plan really was to get a vaccine, get it approved, get it to the states, and let the states deploy and decide how that works, decide which one. And that's really where the plan ended. So right now the states are working really hard to figure out funding for deployment, to figure out how to get the vaccine to where it needs to go, how to deploy it, and exactly what really, in the level of the weeds order, people will be getting it. And all of that is a little bit chaotic. These plans are evolving really quickly. I know that, you know, we listen to the news just like everyone, and you'll hear things. You know, we're talking directly to agencies that are actually doing this, and so we have this kind of inside track of information. And then we'll hear on the news something where it'll say, you know, only this group is getting it first. And we know that because every state is developing their plans and some of them are still actively in development, that the news is not necessarily trying to mislead anyone. It's just that the information is evolving so quickly. My point being, though, is that our clinics are a great way to make sure you get this vaccine at the earliest possible opportunity. After our clinics are done, we're not really sure how and when you'll get that vaccine because we're not really sure about availability. So do look at this as a wonderful opportunity. If you have any questions about whether you want to get vaccinated, if you have open questions that you want to understand a little bit more about the vaccine, do ask them now, because this wonderful opportunity is coming really soon, and we want you to be at that decision so that you can take advantage of these clinics and do everything in your power to do so. And that's it. That's it. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, your leadership team, your clinical team, generations are all here to answer those questions and support you. Please do reach out. We are so excited to be at this point. You'll hear a lot of people say this is the beginning of the end. It's the beginning. We're right here. But we really can see the future, and we're really excited to get there. So ask your questions and be sure you get them answered as thoroughly as you need to. And thank you for being part of our family.